November 15th, 1866, St. Louis, Missouri. The recruitment office is cold. It smells like leather and sweat and tobacco smoke. A young black person walks in, 22 years old, hair cut short, wearing loose clothes that hide the body underneath, hands calloused from 4 years of war work, eyes that have seen things no person should see. The recruiting officer barely looks up. He's processed 50 men this week. The Army needs soldiers for the new Buffalo regiments. They need black men to go west, to fight Apache, to patrol the border, to do the dangerous work white soldiers refuse. The young person steps forward, speaks in a low voice. My name is William Cathay. I want to enlist. I want to serve. The doctor comes over. Quick examination. Stand up straight. Open your mouth. Let me see your teeth. Hold out your hands. Can you see that chart on the wall? Good. You pass. Sign here. William Cathay signs the papers. The hand holding the pen is shaking slightly. If they discover the truth right now, it's over. Arrest for fraud. Maybe jail. Definitely humiliation. But the doctor nods. You're in, soldier. Welcome to the 38th Infantry Regiment. You ship out next week. William Cathay breathes out slowly. The secret is safe for now. But I know something the Army doesn't know. Something that will stay hidden for 2 years. William Cathay is not a man. William Cathay is Cathay Williams, a black woman who just became the only female Buffalo soldier in American history. In the next 2 years, she will march hundreds of miles through desert heat. She will face Apache warriors. She will survive disease that kills stronger men. She will serve her country with honor while hiding who she is every single day. And when they finally discover her secret, they will bury her story for more than 100 years. What happened in those 2 years would be erased from military records and American memory. But today, her courage roars back to life. Everything you learned about women in the military is incomplete. They taught you that women didn't serve in combat until the 20th century. They taught you that black women in the 1800s were only slaves, servants, field workers. They taught you that women were too weak, too delicate, too emotional for war. They lied. I'm going to show you the truth about a woman who disguised herself as a man to serve in one of the most dangerous military units in American history. A woman who proved that black women have always been warriors, even when the law said they couldn't be. A woman whose story explains why black women today still have to be twice as strong to get half as much respect. By the end of this video, you'll know why Cathay Williams had to hide her identity to gain her freedom. You'll know why the Buffalo Soldiers, the bravest black fighting force in the West, were erased from textbooks for generations. You'll know why the Army accepted her service but denied her pension when she needed it most. And you'll understand why this story matters right now, today, in January 2026, when black women still earn 64 cents for every dollar a white man makes. When black women are still 3 times more likely to die in childbirth. When black women veterans are still fighting for benefits they earned. This isn't ancient history. Cathay Williams was discharged in 1868. That's only 4 generations ago. Your great-great-grandmother could have known her. Your family line runs directly through the world she fought to survive in. If your grandmother ever told you that a black woman has to be twice as brave just to be seen as equal, she was channeling the spirit of Cathay Williams. If your mother ever told you not to wait for permission to do what's right, she was passing down wisdom that Cathay lived by. This is your history. This affects your life today. And after I tell you this story, you'll never see the military the same way. You'll never see black women struggle the same way. You'll never accept the lies they teach in schools the same way. So let's begin with the truth they buried. Cathay Williams was born in 1844 in Independence, Missouri. Born on a plantation, born into slavery. Her mother was enslaved. Her father was probably the white plantation owner, though the records don't say his name. That's how it worked. White men raped enslaved women, and the children belonged to the master. Cathay belonged to William Johnson, a wealthy plantation owner. But Cathay wasn't sent to the fields. She was light-skinned enough to work in the house. She cooked. She cleaned. She served meals. She learned skills that field slaves never learned. How to sew, how to read a little maybe, though it was illegal, how to watch white people and understand what they wanted before they said it, how to make herself useful enough to avoid the whip. This was her world for the first 17 years of her life. Work from dawn until after dark. Obey or be beaten. Watch your mother age too fast from exhaustion. Know that you own nothing, not even your own body. Know that you could be sold tomorrow and never see your family again. Then, 1861 arrived. Cathay was 17 years old, and the Civil War exploded across America. The war came to Missouri fast and brutal. Union Army and Confederate forces tearing through the state. Battles in the streets, farms burned, towns are occupied, and in 1861, Union forces captured Independence. They called it liberation. Union soldiers marched into town and declared the enslaved people free. But it wasn't freedom. Not really. The Union Army had a policy for freed slaves. They called them contraband, confiscated property, like furniture or horses or weapons taken from the enemy. Cathay went from being enslaved by a plantation owner to being smuggled by the Union Army. Different name, same lack of freedom. The Army needed workers, cooks, laundresses, servants for the officers, and they took the freed slaves and put them to work. No choice, no pay, just slightly better treatment than slavery, and the promise that someday, when the war ended, they'd be truly free. So Cathay became a cook and laundress for Union officers. She was assigned to the 8th Indiana Volunteer Infantry Regiment. She traveled with them from Missouri to Arkansas to Louisiana to Georgia. 4 years of war, 4 years of following the Army, 4 years of cooking meals and washing clothes and watching men die. She saw things no teenager should see. Bodies torn apart by cannon fire. Field hospitals where surgeons sawed off limbs without anesthesia. Wounded men screaming through the night. Dead soldiers piled like cordwood, waiting for burial. The smell of gangrene and death that never quite washed out of the laundry. But she also saw something else. She saw black soldiers, the United States colored troops. Black men who enlisted to fight for their own freedom. And she saw how different they were from the contraband workers. The soldiers had uniforms. They had rifles. They had pride. White officers still commanded them, but they were soldiers. They got paid $13 a month. Not much, but it was something. They got food and shelter. They got respect, at least from each other. Cathay watched them drill, watched them march, watched them prepare for battle. And she learned. She learned how the Army worked. She learned the routines, the commands, the structure. She learned that a uniform could transform how people saw you. She traveled with General Philip Sheridan's forces through the Shenandoah Valley. She was there when the Army marched through Georgia with General Sherman. She witnessed some of the biggest campaigns of the war. And through it all, she was invisible. Just another black woman doing laundry in the background. April 9th, 1865. General Robert E. Lee surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse. The war was over. The Confederacy was defeated. Slavery was abolished. The 13th Amendment was passed. Cathay Williams was free. 21 years old and finally, legally, completely free. But free to do what? She had no money. The Army didn't pay contraband workers. She had no home. The plantation she'd been born on wasn't hers. She had no family that she could find. The war had scattered everyone. She had skills, cooking, and laundry. But those were the only jobs available to black women. And those jobs paid almost nothing. $3 a month maybe, if you could find work. If the employer didn't cheat you, if they didn't assault you and fire you when you complained. Cathay had spent 4 years with the Army. She'd seen the world beyond Missouri. She'd survived war zones. She'd learned independence. And now they expected her to go work as a maid for some white family? To accept poverty wages and abuse and say thank you for the opportunity? No. She'd seen another path. She'd seen black men transform into soldiers, seen them earn wages, seeing them earn respect, seen them travel and fight and build something bigger than themselves. She wanted that. But the Army didn't accept women. Not officially. Women could be nurses maybe, but that required education Cathay didn't have. Women could be laundresses who traveled with regiments, but that was the same work she'd been doing as contraband. No uniform, no rifle, no respect. So in 1866, Cathay Williams made a decision that would change her life and make her a legend that history tried to erase. She decided that if they wouldn't let her serve as a woman, she would serve as a man. Think about how desperate you'd have to be to make that choice. Think about the courage it required. One mistake, and she'd be discovered, arrested for fraud, publicly humiliated, maybe jailed, definitely unemployed and unemployable. But she'd survived slavery. She'd survived 4 years of war. She'd survived seeing her people treated as property and contraband and less than human. She could survive this too. July 26, 1866. Congress passed an act creating 6 new regiments for the United States Army, 4 infantry regiments, and 2 cavalry regiments, all composed of black enlisted men with white officers. They would be stationed in the West. Their mission was to patrol the frontier, protect settlers, fight hostile Native American tribes, and guard the Mexican border. White soldiers called them Buffalo Soldiers. Some say it was because their hair looked like buffalo fur. Some say it was because they fought as fiercely as wounded buffalo. The name stuck. And those Buffalo Soldiers would become some of the most effective fighting forces in the American West, with the lowest desertion rate of any units in the Army. Cathay saw the recruitment notices. The 38th Infantry Regiment was recruiting in St. Louis. They needed men. They weren't asking too many questions. The physical exams were basic, and Cathay was tall, 5 feet 9 inches. Tall for a woman, average for a man. She was strong from 4 years of hard labor. She had stamina from marching thousands of miles with the Army. She cut her hair short. She found men's clothing that fit loosely enough to hide her shape. She practiced walking like a man, talking like a man, standing like a man. She reversed her name. Cathay Williams became William Cathay. And on November 15th, 1866, William Cathay walked into that recruitment office in St. Louis. The doctor examined her quickly, too quickly to notice what he wasn't looking for. He checked her height, her teeth, her hands, her eyesight. He asked if she had any diseases. He wrote down her answers, and he approved her for enlistment. William Cathay signed a 3-year contract, $13 a month, assigned to Company A of the 38th United States Infantry Regiment, one of the Buffalo Soldiers. She had 2 cousins and a friend who knew her secret. They enlisted too. They watched her back. They helped her maintain the disguise. But to everyone else, she was just another black man joining the army to earn a wage and escape poverty. October 17th, 1866. The 38th Infantry was ordered to deploy to New Mexico Territory. The regiment would march from Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, to Fort Union, New Mexico, then spread out to various posts along the frontier. Cathay marched with them, hundreds of miles on foot through plains and desert. The soldiers carried Springfield rifles that weighed 10 pounds. They carried backpacks with rations, ammunition, blanket, extra clothes, personal items, 40 pounds of gear. They marched 15 to 20 miles a day in the summer heat. Temperatures hit 100 degrees during the day, dropped to 40 degrees at night. Water was scarce. Food was hardtack and salt pork and beans. The men slept on the ground. No tents most nights, just a blanket and the stars and the sounds of coyotes howling in the darkness. Cathay kept up. She had to. Falling behind meant being left behind, or worse, being examined by a doctor who might discover her secret. Every day was a test. Could she march as far as the men? Yes. Could she carry the same weight? Yes. Could she shoot as straight? Yes. Could she follow orders and do the work and never complain? Yes. But every day was also a tightrope walk of deception. She couldn't bathe with the other soldiers. She found excuses, said she was modest, preferred to wash alone in the river after dark. The men thought it was strange, but didn't push it. She couldn't undress in front of anyone. She changed clothes under her blanket or behind rocks or in the darkness before dawn. She wore loose layers that hid her body shape. She couldn't use the latrine trenches where men relieved themselves in full view of each other. She waited until she could go alone into the brush. She made it look casual, natural, just another soldier taking care of business. Every moment required vigilance. Every interaction was a performance. One slip and 2 years of her life would end in disgrace. But she didn't slip. She kept the secret. And she served. The 38th Infantry arrived at Fort Union in New Mexico in late 1866. Fort Union was a massive supply depot for all the military posts in the Southwest. Adobe buildings, corrals for hundreds of horses, warehouses full of ammunition and food, and hundreds of soldiers, both black and white, though the black regiments were kept separate. From Fort Union, companies of the 38th were sent to smaller posts: Fort Cummings, Fort Bayard, Fort Selden. These were rough frontier outposts in Apache territory, small garrisons of a few dozen men, isolated, dangerous. The Buffalo Soldiers' mission was to protect white settlers, stagecoach routes, and railroad construction crews from Apache raids. The Apaches were fighting to defend their land from American expansion. They were some of the fiercest warriors in North America, masters of desert warfare. They could appear from nowhere, strike fast, and vanish into the mountains. The Buffalo Soldiers patrolled constantly, long marches through desert and mountains, days without water, nights sleeping on rocks, skirmishes with Apache warriors who knew every canyon and every hiding place. Cathay participated in these patrols. She rode horses. She carried a rifle. She stood guard duty in the cold desert nights. She dug latrines and built fortifications and did all the brutal labor that soldiers do. And she faced the same dangers the men faced. Apache attacks, rattlesnakes, scorpions, heat stroke, dehydration, exposure. But the biggest danger turned out to be disease. Fort life in the 1860s was a breeding ground for sickness. Soldiers lived in close quarters. Hygiene was minimal. Water sources were often contaminated, and medical care was primitive at best. Smallpox swept through the 38th Infantry in 1867. Men died. Others were left scarred and weakened. Cathay survived, but she got sick. Fever, chills, weakness. She reported to the infirmary. The Army doctor examined her. He treated her fever. He sent her back to duty. She got sick again. Rheumatism. Her joints ached from sleeping on cold ground night after night. She could barely walk some mornings. Back to the infirmary. She got sick a third time. The doctor was getting suspicious. Most soldiers got sick occasionally. But Cathay was in the infirmary more than most. And the doctor started asking questions, started examining her more carefully. And then, in 1868, the secret came out. The exact details are lost to history. We don't know if a doctor discovered her during an examination, or if someone reported her, or if she told someone in confidence and was betrayed. But somehow, the truth was revealed. William Cathay was actually Cathay Williams, a woman who had served for almost 2 years in the United States Army without anyone knowing. The scandal ripped through the regiment. A woman? In the Buffalo Soldiers? Impossible, disgusting, immoral, against regulations, against nature. The officers had to decide what to do. They could court-martial her for fraud, make an example of her, send her to military prison. But that would mean admitting that a woman had served for 2 years and they never noticed. That their doctors had examined her multiple times and never discovered the truth. That she'd marched and fought and done everything the men did and done it well enough that no one suspected. That would be embarrassing for the Army, for the officers, for the doctors, for the entire regiment. So they chose a different path. They discharged her quietly. October 14th, 1868. Discharged for disability. The official records say she was unfit for service due to poor health. No mention of her being a woman. No court-martial. No scandal in the newspapers. Just a quiet discharge and a hope that the whole embarrassing situation would disappear. Cathay Williams was free again. But this time she had something she didn't have before. She had military service. She was a veteran. She'd earned that uniform, even if they took it away. She tried to build a life. She moved to Pueblo, Colorado, and worked as a cook. She moved to Trinidad, Colorado, and worked as a seamstress. She got married briefly. Her husband beat her and stole her money. She divorced him. That took courage too in 1870, when women had almost no rights and divorce was scandalous. She was sick. The rheumatism never went away. She had other health problems, probably from her time in the Army. The hard marches, the exposure, the poor food and water. So in 1889, Cathay applied for a disability pension. She was a veteran. She'd served honorably for 2 years. She'd been discharged for disability. Under Army regulations, she was entitled to compensation. The Army said no. Their reasoning was brutal and simple. She had fraudulently enlisted by concealing her sex. Therefore, her service didn't count. Therefore, she deserved no pension, nothing, not $1. She'd given 2 years of her life. She'd marched hundreds of miles. She'd faced Apache warriors. She'd gotten sick from the service. She'd served as well as any man. And the Army said she deserved nothing because she was a woman. She died in poverty sometime after 1893. We don't know when. We don't know where. No death certificate was ever filed, or if it was, it's been lost. No grave marker, no obituary. She simply disappeared from history. In 1893, a reporter for the St. Louis Daily Times found her and interviewed her. The article was published on January 2nd, 1893. It was titled, "She Served in the Army." The reporter treated her story like a curiosity, a strange woman who did something unnatural, not a hero, not a pioneer, just an oddity. That article was forgotten for decades. Cathay Williams vanished from memory. The first and only known woman to serve in the Buffalo Soldiers, erased. But hold on, because Cathay wasn't alone. And the pattern of erasure goes far beyond one woman's story. Here's what they don't teach you. Cathay Williams wasn't the only woman who disguised herself as a man to serve in the American military. She wasn't even the first. And the fact that you probably didn't learn about any of them in school proves that this erasure was systematic and intentional. During the Civil War, historians estimate that between 250 and 400 women disguised themselves as men and fought. That's not speculation. That's based on documented cases, letters, photographs, discharge records, pension applications, newspaper articles. 250 to 400 women, and how many did you learn about in school? I'm guessing 0. Maybe 1 if you were lucky. Let me tell you about Frances Clayton. She enlisted as Jack Williams in a Minnesota regiment. She fought in battles in Missouri. She served in artillery and cavalry units. She was photographed in full uniform holding a rifle and a sword. That photograph still exists. You can look it up. A woman dressed as a man, serving in the Union Army, documented proof. When she was discovered, the newspapers called it a scandal. They didn't call her brave. They called it unnatural, against God's design, a corruption of womanhood. Sarah Edmonds enlisted as Franklin Thompson in Michigan. She served 2 years as a nurse, mail carrier, and even a spy for the Union. After the war, she wrote a memoir. It became a bestseller. She applied for a veteran's pension and was initially denied because she'd served under a false identity. It took years of fighting before she finally got recognition. Loretta Janetta Velasquez fought for the Confederacy disguised as Harry T. Buford. She wore a fake mustache and beard. She padded her uniform to look more masculine. She fought in the First Battle of Bull Run and the Battle of Shiloh. After the war, she wrote her memoir. Critics called her a liar, said no woman could have done what she claimed, said she was making it up for attention. But the pattern is clear. Women served, women fought, women proved they could do everything men could do. And every single time they were discovered, the reaction was the same: scandal, disgrace, erasure. They couldn't let people know that women were capable of military service. That would threaten the entire social order. If women could fight, what else could they do? Vote? Own property? Have authority over men? The whole system of male dominance depended on women being seen as weak, emotional, in need of protection. So every woman who proved otherwise had to be dismissed as an aberration, a freak, an unnatural exception that proved nothing. And Cathay Williams faced double erasure. She was a woman in a man's world, and she was black in a white supremacist nation. The Buffalo Soldiers themselves were systematically erased from American history for over a century. Think about that. These men were 20% of the cavalry forces in the American West. They fought in nearly every major campaign against Native American tribes. They built roads and telegraph lines across thousands of miles of hostile territory. They protected settlers and mail routes and railroad crews. 18 Buffalo Soldiers received the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military decoration, for extraordinary bravery. They had the lowest desertion rate of any Army units. They served with distinction for over 30 years, and they were almost completely left out of history books until the 1990s. How is that possible? How do you erase an entire military force that served for 3 decades? You do it deliberately. You do it systematically. You do it because acknowledging black military heroism would undermine the narrative of white superiority. Think about every Western movie you've ever seen. Cowboys and Indians, brave settlers and the U.S. cavalry riding to the rescue. Who did you see in those movies? White soldiers, white heroes, white men building civilization in the wilderness. But in reality, 1 out of every 4 cowboys in the Old West was black. And the soldiers protecting those wagon trains and settlements? Many of them were Buffalo Soldiers. Black men fighting and dying to expand a nation that treated them as second-class citizens. Hollywood erased them. Textbooks erased them. The national mythology erased them. Because America wanted to believe it was built by white hands alone. The same thing happened to Black Wall Street in Tulsa, to the Rosewood Massacre in Florida, to the Wilmington coup in North Carolina. Every time black people built something successful, white supremacists destroyed it and then erased it from history. The pattern is undeniable. Create, destroy, erase, repeat. Do you see it now? Cathay Williams served honorably, erased. Buffalo Soldiers fought bravely, erased. Black business districts thrived, destroyed and erased. Black inventors created world-changing technologies. Their patents were stolen, their names forgotten, erased. This wasn't accident. This wasn't carelessness. This was policy. This was systematic. This was intentional cultural genocide. Every time black people proved their worth, proved their intelligence, proved their courage, proved their humanity, the response was the same. Deny it. Destroy it. Erase it from the record. Make sure future generations never know it happened. Why? Because if Americans knew the truth, they'd have to confront the lie that black people were inferior. They'd have to admit that slavery wasn't benevolent, that segregation wasn't necessary, that every law and policy and custom designed to keep black people oppressed was built on a foundation of deliberate lies. So they buried the truth, they burned the records, they removed the stories from textbooks. They made sure that when you learned American history, you learned a sanitized version where white people were always the heroes and black people were always the victims who needed saving. But Cathay Williams wasn't a victim. She was a warrior. The Buffalo Soldiers weren't charity cases. They were elite fighting forces. Your ancestors weren't helpless. They were nation builders whose work was stolen and credited to others. And the fact that you're learning this now, probably for the first time, proves that the erasure worked. For generations, until this moment. But now you know. And what happened next, the mechanisms they used to suppress this truth, will make you understand exactly how deep the conspiracy goes. Let me show you exactly how they covered it up. Because understanding the mechanism of erasure is just as important as knowing the stories they buried. This wasn't passive forgetting. This was active suppression. And it happened in 4 distinct ways. First, they destroyed the physical evidence. Military records from the 1860s and 70s have massive gaps. Cathay Williams's service record? It's incomplete. We have her enlistment papers. We have her discharge papers. But everything in between is missing. No detailed mission logs, no patrol records, no letters she might have written, no diary entries, nothing. The 38th Infantry Regiment served in New Mexico for years. They patrolled hundreds of miles. They engaged in skirmishes with Apache warriors. They built infrastructure. Where are the daily logs? Where are the after-action reports? Most of them are gone. The official explanation is always the same: lost in a fire, lost in a flood, lost in a move between facilities. Lost, lost, lost. But here's the interesting thing. White regiment records from the same time period, much more complete. The 7th Cavalry's records, Custer's unit, those are detailed and well-preserved. But the Buffalo Soldiers' records, full of gaps. Fort Selden in New Mexico, where Cathay served. The fort was active from 1865 to 1891. 26 years of operations. The records that survive are fragmentary at best. Researchers have tried to piece together what happened there, who served there, what they did. It's like trying to complete a puzzle when someone threw away half the pieces. This pattern repeats everywhere Buffalo soldiers served. Fort Davis in Texas, Fort Robinson in Nebraska, Fort Huachuca in Arizona. Incomplete records, missing documentation, lost files. And it's not just military records. Cathay applied for a disability pension in 1889. That application was denied. But where is the full file? Where is her medical documentation? Where are the letters she wrote arguing her case? The Army kept detailed records on pension applications. But Cathay's file is thin, suspiciously thin. When people's stories are erased, it starts with destroying or hiding the evidence that they existed. Second mechanism, legal suppression. They use the law itself as a weapon to deny justice and recognition. Cathay Williams served for 2 years. She marched hundreds of miles. She faced enemy combatants. She suffered health damage that would affect her for the rest of her life. Under military regulations, soldiers discharged for disability were entitled to pensions. $8 a month. Not much, but when you're living in poverty, it's survival money. The Army denied her claim. Their reasoning was crystal clear in the inspector's report. She fraudulently enlisted by concealing her sex. Therefore, her service doesn't count. Therefore, she gets nothing. Think about the cruelty of that logic. She did the work. She took the risks. She suffered the consequences. But because she had to lie to be allowed to serve, her service is invalid. It's the same logic used to deny rights to people throughout history. You weren't allowed to do the thing. You did it anyway by finding a loophole. Therefore, you don't deserve credit for doing it. Black soldiers faced legal discrimination throughout their service. From 1861 to 1864. Black soldiers in the Union Army were paid $10 a month, while white soldiers were paid $13 a month for the same work. Same uniform, same danger, less pay. That was federal law. After the war, When the Buffalo Soldier regiments were created, black enlisted men could serve, but black officers were almost non-existent. White officers commanded black troops. The Army's official position was that black men weren't intelligent enough or disciplined enough to lead. That was policy, written policy. Buffalo soldiers were court-martialed at rates 3 times higher than white soldiers for the same infractions, and their punishments were consistently harsher. A white soldier caught drunk might get a few days of extra duty. A black soldier caught drunk might get a month in the stockade. The Brownsville affair in 1906 shows how extreme this got. In Brownsville, Texas, someone shot up the town. The Army blamed the black soldiers of the 25th Infantry Regiment. No evidence, no trial, no investigation. President Theodore Roosevelt dishonorably discharged 167 black soldiers, all of them, every man in the regiment, without a hearing, without proof, without justice. Those dishonorable discharges meant no pension, no veterans' benefits, no honor. Their lives of service erased with the stroke of a pen. It took 72 years before the Army reversed those discharges. 1978. By then, every single one of those soldiers was dead. Justice delayed until justice became meaningless. That's legal suppression, using the law to deny what's owed, using the law to punish people for being who they are, using the law to erase their service and their sacrifice. Third mechanism, educational erasure. They removed the stories from textbooks and curriculums so entire generations grew up never knowing this history existed. I want you to think about your own education. How much time did you spend learning about the Civil War? Probably weeks. How much time learning about westward expansion? Probably weeks. How many times did you hear about Buffalo Soldiers? I'm guessing 0, maybe a single sentence in a sidebar if you were lucky. From the 1870s through the 1970s, that's 100 years, Buffalo Soldiers were essentially absent from American history textbooks. The standard narrative went like this. After the Civil War, the Army went west. They fought Indians. They protected settlers. They helped build America. The end. No mention that 20% of those cavalry soldiers were black. No mention of their bravery or their sacrifice or their essential role in westward expansion, just erased from the story. Cathay Williams? Not mentioned in any textbook until the 1980s at the earliest. The only female Buffalo soldier. A woman who served honorably for 2 years. A story that should be taught to every school child as an example of courage and determination. Completely absent from education. Why? Because textbook publishers and school boards made deliberate choices about what history to teach. And they chose to teach a version of American history where white men were the only heroes, where black people were props in the background, slaves who were freed, freedmen who struggled, civil rights marchers who waited patiently for justice. They didn't teach about black soldiers who fought in every American war since the Revolution. They didn't teach about black cowboys who built the West. They didn't teach about Black Wall Street or black inventors or black scientists or black millionaires. In the 1990s, researchers surveyed high school students across America. 90% could not identify who the Buffalo Soldiers were. 90%. Nearly every student in America was graduating without knowing that black soldiers served with distinction on the frontier for over 30 years. That's not an accident. That's curriculum design. That's a choice about what matters and what doesn't. And the choice was clear. Black achievement doesn't matter enough to teach. Look at your own state's history standards. Look up when Buffalo Soldiers were added to the curriculum. For most states, it was the 1990s or 2000s. Some states still barely mention them. Oklahoma, where Fort Selden records are housed, didn't require teaching Buffalo Soldiers history until the late 1990s. Missouri, where Cathay Williams was born and enlisted, didn't add her story to suggested teaching materials until the 2000s. They controlled what you learned. They made sure you didn't learn about people like Cathay Williams. They made sure you graduated thinking that women didn't serve in combat until modern times. That Black people didn't contribute to building America until the Civil Rights Movement gave them opportunities. All lies, all deliberate educational erasure. Fourth mechanism, media manipulation. They controlled the narrative through newspapers, books, movies, television. They decided whose stories got told and how they got told. When Cathay Williams was interviewed in 1893, the newspaper treated her like a curiosity. The headline was, "She served in the Army," not "She served with honor." Not female soldier's incredible story. Just, "Look at this weird thing. Isn't it strange?" The article described her service, but the tone was dismissive. It questioned whether she really did what she said. It focused on how unusual it was for a woman to dress as a man. It treated her like a circus act, not a veteran. That article appeared once, then nothing. No follow-up, no investigation into how she managed to serve undetected. No interviews with other soldiers who served with her. No analysis of what her story meant for women's capabilities. Just one article, and then silence. Compare that to how white Civil War veterans were treated. Their stories were published in books and magazines. Their reunions were covered extensively. Monuments were built. Memorials were dedicated. They were honored constantly in the press. But Buffalo Soldiers? Silence. Or when they were mentioned, it was often in negative context. Newspapers in the West frequently portrayed them as aggressive or dangerous. When conflicts occurred between Black soldiers and white civilians, the newspapers always blamed the soldiers. Always. Then came Hollywood. From the 1920s onward, Hollywood made hundreds of Western films. Cowboys and Indians, cavalry to the rescue, brave frontiersmen building civilization. And in all those hundreds of films made over 70 years, how many featured Buffalo Soldiers as main characters? Almost none. Hollywood created an entire mythology of the American West, where Black people barely existed. But the reality was that 1 in 4 cowboys was Black. Thousands of Buffalo Soldiers served in the West. Black settlers homesteaded. Black entrepreneurs built businesses. Hollywood erased all of it. They created a visual history where the West was built by white men alone. And for generations, Americans believed it because that's all they saw. This is propaganda. This is social engineering. This is deciding that some stories matter and some don't. And consistently, systematically, deliberately deciding that Black stories don't matter. Even today in 2026, when you search online for information about Cathay Williams, you'll find limited sources. A few articles, a historical marker that was only installed in 2018. Some academic papers, but no major films, no documentaries on major streaming platforms, no best-selling books. Her story should be as famous as Harriet Tubman's, as celebrated as any Medal of Honor recipients. But it's not, because the mechanisms of suppression are still operating. The erasure continues. Now you might be thinking, okay, this happened in the past. This is historical injustice. But it's over now, right? We've corrected these things, right? Wrong. What happened to Cathay Williams explains why your life looks the way it does right now in 2026. The same systems of suppression are still operating. The same denials of recognition and resources are still happening. And until you understand the connection between her story and your reality, nothing will change. Let me connect the dots for you. Let me show you why Cathay Williams' story matters to your life today. 2024 statistics. Black women serve in the United States military at higher rates than any other demographic group. 31% of all active duty women are Black. Black women are overrepresented in military service compared to their percentage of the general population. Why? Why do Black women join the military at such high rates? Is it patriotism? Partly. Is it family tradition? Partly. But the biggest reason is the same reason Cathay Williams joined in 1866, limited options. In 1865, when Cathay was freed from slavery, what jobs were available to her? Domestic servant, laundress, cook, all low paid, all high risk of exploitation and abuse. The military offered wages, food, shelter, and a small measure of respect. So she took it. In 2026, Black women still face limited economic options. The wage gap for Black women is the worst of any demographic. Black women earn 64 cents for every dollar that white men earn. 64 cents. Not 80 cents like white women. Not 78 cents like Black men. 64 cents. Black women are more likely to be the sole breadwinners in their families. More likely to be supporting children and elderly parents. More likely to need stable income and health insurance. And the military offers that. Steady paycheck, health care, housing allowance, educational benefits. So Black women join. They serve. They sacrifice, just like Cathay did. And just like Cathay, they faced discrimination and denial even while in uniform. Black women in the military report sexual harassment and assault at higher rates than white women. They're promoted more slowly. They're court-martialed more frequently for minor infractions. And when they leave service, they struggle to get the VA benefits they earned. Vanessa Guillen was a 20-year-old soldier at Fort Hood in Texas. She was murdered on April 22, 2020, by a fellow soldier who had been sexually harassing her. She'd reported the harassment. Nothing was done. She was killed. Her body was dismembered and hidden. The Army tried to cover it up, tried to claim she went AWOL. It took weeks of her family demanding answers before the truth came out. And even then, no one in the chain of command faced serious consequences for ignoring her reports of harassment. Vanessa Guillen was Mexican-American, but her story resonates with Black women who serve because they know. They know the military still doesn't protect women, still doesn't take their safety seriously, still punishes them for speaking up. Cathay Williams had to hide her identity to serve. Today's women can serve openly, but they still face violence, harassment, and institutional betrayal. The uniform changed. The treatment didn't change enough. Now let's talk about recognition and what's owed. Cathay Williams was denied her pension. She served honorably. She was disabled by her service, and the Army said she deserved nothing. That pattern continued for generations. After World War II, the GI Bill was supposed to help veterans buy homes, go to college, start businesses. It built the American middle class, but it built the white American middle class. Black veterans were systematically denied GI Bill benefits. They applied for home loans and were rejected. They tried to use their education benefits, but white colleges wouldn't admit them. Black colleges were overcrowded and underfunded. They tried to buy homes, but redlining policies made it illegal for banks to give mortgages to black people in most neighborhoods. So while white veterans used the GI Bill to buy homes in the suburbs, building equity and generational wealth, black veterans were locked out. They had to rent. They had to stay in underfunded neighborhoods. They couldn't build wealth to pass to their children. That's why today, in 2026, white veteran families have median wealth of $188,000, while black veteran families have median wealth of $24,000. That gap exists because black veterans were denied the benefits they earned. The wealth gap in America isn't because black people don't work hard. It's because at every turn, when black people earned something, it was stolen or denied. Cathay Williams earned a pension, denied. World War II. Black veterans earned GI Bill benefits, denied or obstructed. Black families built wealth in Tulsa and Rosewood and Wilmington, destroyed. This is an ancient history. If Cathay Williams had received her pension of $8 a month starting in 1889, and if she'd been able to save even a portion of it, and if she'd been able to pass that small savings to descendants, compounded over 5 generations, that would be worth tens of thousands of dollars today. Multiply that by the thousands of Buffalo soldiers who were denied pensions or given inadequate compensation. That's millions of dollars of stolen wealth. Multiply that by every black veteran denied GI Bill benefits. That's billions of dollars of stolen wealth. The wealth gap isn't natural. It's manufactured through systematic denial of earned benefits. And this brings us to reparations. People say, why should we pay for slavery that ended over 150 years ago? But we're not just talking about slavery. We're talking about Cathay Williams' stolen pension. We're talking about GI Bill discrimination that happened 70 years ago. We're talking about redlining that continued until 1968. We're talking about ongoing denial of benefits and opportunities. Every time someone says black people need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, remember Cathay Williams. She did everything right. She worked hard. She served her country. She earned her benefits. And they said no. She gets nothing. That's not failure to pull yourself up. That's having your bootstraps cut every time you try to climb. Now let's talk about black women specifically. Cathay had to disguise herself as a man to be taken seriously, to have access to wages and respect and opportunity. She had to hide who she was. Black women today don't have to disguise themselves physically, but they still have to work twice as hard to get half as far. That's not a metaphor. That's statistical reality. Black women are more educated than any other demographic group. Higher college graduation rates than black men, and white women. But black women with college degrees earn less than white men with only high school diplomas. Think about that. More education, less pay. Black women are starting businesses at faster rates than any other group. But they get approved for business loans at lower rates and receive smaller loan amounts when approved. Same business plans, same credit scores, different treatment. Black women in healthcare face shocking disparities. Black women are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than white women. 3 times. That ratio holds true regardless of education level or income. Serena Williams, one of the greatest athletes in history, wealthy, with access to the best health care, nearly died after giving birth because medical staff didn't take her concerns seriously. Why? Because medical training still teaches that Black people feel less pain, that Black women are stronger and can handle more, that their complaints are exaggerated. This isn't ancient racism. This is current medical practice in 2026. If your grandmother worked her whole life and never got ahead, this is why. If your mother was the most qualified person for the job but got passed over for promotion, this is why. If you're exhausted from having to be perfect while watching mediocre people succeed, this is why. The system that denied Cathay Williams her pension is the same system that denies you equal pay. The system that erased Buffalo soldiers from history is the same system that erases Black women's contributions today. The system that said women couldn't serve is the same system that says Black women are too aggressive, too loud, too much. This is your stolen inheritance. Cathay Williams should have been honored as a hero. She should have received her pension. She should have been able to build a stable life and pass something down to the next generation. Instead, she died in poverty and obscurity. And her descendants, if she had any, inherited nothing. Not money, not recognition, not even the knowledge that they came from a warrior. How many other stories like hers were erased? How many other ancestors of yours did extraordinary things that were buried? How much wealth was stolen from your family line over 5 generations? How much recognition was denied? You can't calculate it exactly, but you can see the results. You can see it in the wealth gap, the education gap, the healthcare gap, the opportunity gap. Every gap exists because of systematic denial of what was earned and owed. If you feel like you're starting from behind, you are. Not because you're inferior, not because your ancestors didn't work hard, but because every time they built something, it was stolen. Every time they earned something, it was denied. Every time they achieved something, it was erased. Cathay Williams' story is your story. Her denied pension is your family's stolen wealth. Her erasure from history is your disconnection from your heritage. Her courage that went unrecognized is your strength that gets overlooked. But here's what they didn't count on. Here's what they couldn't erase. The truth survives. The stories survive. The strength survives. And it's time to reclaim all of it. Let me tell you who you really are. Not who they taught you to be. Not the diminished version they put in textbooks. Not the victim narrative they're comfortable with. I'm going to tell you the truth about your identity and your inheritance. You are not a victim. You are not disadvantaged. You are not starting from zero. You are a descendant of warriors who survived things that would destroy most people. You carry their DNA. You carry their resilience. You carry their unbreakable spirit. You are a descendant of Cathay Williams, a woman who looked at impossible odds and said, "Watch me anyway." A woman who disguised herself as a man because that was the only way to access opportunity. A woman who marched hundreds of miles through hostile territory. A woman who faced Apache warriors and desert heat and army discipline. A woman who kept a secret for 2 years, knowing that one mistake meant total destruction. That's who you come from. That's what's in your blood. You are a descendant of Buffalo soldiers, men who enlisted to fight for a country that hated them, men who had the lowest desertion rate in the Army even though they faced the highest discrimination, men who built telegraph lines and roads and forts across the frontier, men who protected settlers who wouldn't let them eat in the same restaurants. Men who earned 18 medals of honor and countless commendations for bravery. That courage is your inheritance. You are a descendant of people who were enslaved for 250 years and didn't break. People who kept their families together even when they were sold apart. People who kept their faith even when everything was taken from them. People who taught their children to read in secret, knowing it could get them killed. People who ran toward freedom, knowing dogs and slave catchers waited in the darkness. That determination lives in you. You are a descendant of people who built Black Wall Street, who created the wealthiest Black community in America from nothing, who owned businesses and banks and hotels and movie theaters, who sent their children to college, who flew airplanes when the rest of America said Black people weren't smart enough to fly, who built an empire in one generation. That entrepreneurial spirit is yours. You are a descendant of people who survived genocide and kept building. They burned down Black Wall Street. Your ancestors rebuilt. They massacred Rosewood. The survivors moved and started over. They destroyed Black businesses in Wilmington. Black people started new businesses. They bombed churches. Black people rebuilt them and filled them with more people than before. You come from people who cannot be stopped, only slowed down, only set back, but never defeated. Let me reframe everything they taught you. They taught you that Black people were enslaved because they were weak. Lie. Black people were enslaved because they were strong enough to survive the Middle Passage, strong enough to work from sunup to sundown, strong enough to build an entire economy on their backs. Slavers didn't want weak people. They wanted the strongest people they could find. They taught you that Black people needed white people to free them. Lie. Black people freed themselves. Harriet Tubman freed herself and then went back into slave territory 19 times to free others. Armed with a rifle and intelligence and courage. The Underground Railroad was run by Black conductors. The abolition movement was pushed forward by Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth and countless others who risked everything for freedom. They taught you that Black women were just slaves and mammies and domestic servants. Lie. Black women were Cathay Williams. Black women were Mary Fields, aka Stagecoach Mary, who became the first Black woman mail carrier and could outshoot most men. Black women were Edmonia Lewis, the sculptor whose work is in the Smithsonian. Black women were Madam C.J. Walker, who became a millionaire in 1910. Black women have always been warriors, entrepreneurs, artists, soldiers, leaders. The only thing that changed is whether society allowed them to be recognized for it. Your poverty is not your fault. Your struggle is not because you're not working hard enough. Your grandparents weren't poor because they were lazy. They were systematically denied the wealth they earned. Cathay Williams earned a pension. Denied. Your great-grandfather might have earned GI Bill benefits. Denied. Your grandmother might have qualified for a mortgage. Denied by redlining. The wealth gap is not a measure of worth. It's a measure of theft. Your anger is not a character flaw. Your anger is appropriate. Your anger is righteous. When you learn that Cathay Williams served honorably and was denied everything, you should be angry. When you learn that Buffalo soldiers protected a nation that segregated them, you should be angry. When you learn that your ancestors built wealth that was stolen, you should be angry. But channel that anger into action, not violence, not bitterness, but determination. The determination to learn every stolen story, to teach your children the real history, to demand what is owed, to build despite the obstacles, to succeed so loudly that they can't ignore you. You have a divine purpose. God didn't bring your ancestors through the Middle Passage by accident. God didn't preserve them through slavery by chance. God didn't sustain them through Jim Crow and for no reason. God didn't keep Cathay Williams' story alive for over 100 years just for it to stay hidden. God preserved these stories because you need to know them right now. In 2026, at this exact moment in history, when the forces of erasure are trying harder than ever to bury Black history, when critical race theory is being banned, when books are being removed from libraries, when the truth is under attack. You finding this video today is not coincidence. It's divine appointment. You were meant to hear this. You were meant to know who Cathay Williams was. You were meant to understand that you come from warriors. And now that you know, you have a responsibility. You are now a carrier of this truth. You are now a keeper of this history. You are now a teacher who must pass this on. God gave Cathay Williams the courage to disguise herself and serve. God is giving you the courage to stand up and demand recognition. God gave Buffalo soldiers the strength to endure discrimination and keep serving. God is giving you the strength to endure and keep building. God gave your ancestors the resilience to survive everything they faced. God is giving you that same resilience right now. You are a warrior. You might not carry a rifle like Cathay did, but you're fighting battles every day. Fighting for fair wages. Fighting for respect. Fighting for your children's education. Fighting for health care. Fighting for justice. Fighting to be seen as fully human. Those are battles, and you are a soldier in every one of them. You are a survivor of genocide, because what happened to your ancestors was genocide. Slavery was genocide. Lynching was genocide. Medical experimentation was genocide. Forced sterilization was genocide. Mass incarceration is genocide. They tried to eliminate you. They failed. You are here, alive, thriving despite everything they did to prevent it. You are an heir to stolen wealth. They owe you, not as charity, not as guilt payment, as debt repayment. They stole trillions of dollars of wealth from your ancestors, through slavery, through theft of property, through denial of benefits, through discriminatory policies. That wealth is owed. And demanding reparations is not radical. It's accounting. It's justice. It's debt collection. You are unstoppable. They tried to stop Cathay Williams by denying her pension. She kept going. They tried to stop Buffalo soldiers by discriminating against them. They served with honor anyway. They tried to stop your ancestors by destroying their businesses and homes. They rebuilt. They tried to stop you by erasing your history. You're learning it anyway. You cannot be stopped. You can only be slowed down temporarily. But you always get back up. You always keep moving forward. You always find another way. That's who you are. That's whose blood runs through your veins. That's the legacy you carry. Don't let anyone tell you different. Don't let anyone diminish it. Don't let anyone convince you that you're anything less than descended from royalty and warriors and survivors and builders. Cathay Williams was all of those things, and so are you. If you've made it this far, if you've stayed with me through this entire story, then you're part of something bigger than just watching a video. You're part of a movement to reclaim stolen history. You're part of an army of truth seekers who refuse to let our ancestors stay buried. Right now, I need you to do something. Comment the word soldier below. Just that one word, soldier. Do it right now before you forget. That comment tells YouTube that this video matters, that this story needs to reach more people. The algorithm will bury this video in 24 hours if we don't push back. Every comment helps. If you're angry that you never learned about Cathay Williams in school, hit that like button. If you're shocked that Buffalo soldiers were erased from history for 100 years, hit that like button. Your like is not just appreciation, it's warfare against the algorithm that tries to suppress Black history content. Share this video. Don't just watch it and move on. Share it with 3 people: your sister, your mother, your daughter, your church members, your book club, your co-workers. Share it with people who need to know that Black women have always been warriors. This video will get buried if you don't take action right now. YouTube doesn't promote content that challenges dominant narratives. The algorithm favors comfortable content. This is not comfortable content. This is truth that makes people squirm. So it needs your help to spread. Subscribe to this channel because we're not stopping with Cathay Williams. There are hundreds more stories like this. Stories they erased, stories they buried, stories you never learned in school. The Black woman who disguised herself as a man to fight in the Revolutionary War. Yes, that happened. Her name was Deborah Sampson, the all-Black cavalry unit that saved Theodore Roosevelt's life at the Battle of San Juan Hill. Then Roosevelt betrayed them and denied they contributed. The Rough Riders got all the credit. The Buffalo soldiers who actually won the battle were erased. The Black nurses who saved thousands of lives in World War I and were denied recognition because the Army didn't want to admit that Black women were essential to the war effort. The Tuskegee Airmen who flew combat missions in World War II and never lost a bomber they escorted. The most successful fighter group in the war. And most Americans didn't learn about them until the 1990s. Story after story after story. All erased, all buried, all waiting to be told. And we're gonna tell every single one. But we need you. We need you to watch, to comment, to share, to teach your children, to become a carrier of this truth. Don't let your children learn lies in school. Be the history teacher they need. When they come home and say they learned about westward expansion, ask them, did they teach you about Buffalo soldiers? Did they teach you that 1 in 4 cowboys was Black? Did they teach you about Cathay Williams? If the answer is no, teach them yourself. Show them this video. Tell them the truth. Make sure the next generation knows what this generation is just learning. This is not just information. This is ammunition. This is power. This is your heritage. Use it. Comment soldier if you commit to teaching this history. Comment Buffalo if you commit to sharing this video. Make that commitment right now. Out loud to yourself, to God, to your ancestors who are watching. I will not let them erase us again. I will carry this truth forward. I will teach the next generation. I will demand what is owed. You are now a soldier in the army of truth. Cathay Williams fought with a rifle and disguise. You fight with knowledge and refusal to stay silent. Both are warfare. Both are necessary. Both are courageous. Welcome to the fight. Let's finish strong. Bow your heads with me. If you're driving or working, just listen. But be present for this moment. Father God, we come to you today with heavy hearts and fierce spirits. We come with grief for Cathay Williams, a woman who served with honor and died in poverty. A woman who gave 2 years of her life to a country that gave her nothing in return. a woman whose story was buried for over a century. We grieve for her. We grieve for what she endured. We grieve for what she was denied. We come with grief for every Buffalo soldier who fought bravely and was erased from history, for every Black veteran who earned benefits and was denied them, for every Black woman who had to hide who she was just to survive, for every ancestor whose story was stolen from us. But Lord, we also come with thanksgiving. We thank you for preserving Cathay Williams' story, for making sure that one newspaper interview survived, for making sure that discharge papers weren't completely destroyed, for making sure that in 2026, we can still say her name. We thank you that truth cannot be buried forever, that no matter how deep they bury it, it rises. It always rises. We thank you for every woman who came before us, every woman who fought when she was told to submit, every woman who served when she was told to stay home, every woman who survived when she was meant to die, every woman who kept going when everything said to quit. We thank you for their strength. We thank you for their courage. We thank you for their refusal to be broken. We thank you that their blood runs in our veins, that their spirit lives in us, that their strength is our inheritance. Now, Lord, we pray for justice. We pray for recognition of Cathay Williams' service, not just a historical marker, not just academic papers, but full recognition, honor, the pension she was denied, paid to descendants if any can be found, or paid to organizations that serve Black women veterans. We pray for reparations to the families of Buffalo soldiers who were denied their pensions, to the descendants of GI Bill discrimination, to every Black family whose wealth was stolen by systematic denial of earned benefits. We pray for every Black woman veteran still fighting for benefits in 2026, still being denied, still being ignored, still having to prove what she's owed. Give them victory, Lord. Give them justice. Give them what they earned. We pray for awakening, for truth to flood this nation like water covering the sea, for every American to learn what really happened, for every school to teach the real history, for every textbook to include Cathay Williams and Buffalo soldiers and Black Wall Street and Rosewood and Wilmington and every story they tried to erase. Let the truth come out. Let it be undeniable. Let it transform how we see ourselves and our nation. We pray for the end of erasure. Let this be the generation where the pattern breaks, where Black stories are told fully and truthfully, where Black children grow up knowing they come from warriors and builders and heroes. Let erasure end in our generation. Let the lies stop here. Let the truth march forward, unstoppable. And now, Lord, give us courage. The courage of Cathay Williams, who disguised herself to serve. The courage of Buffalo soldiers, who endured discrimination and kept fighting. The courage of ancestors who survived slavery and Jim Crow and lynching and kept building. Pour that courage into us right now. Fill us with it. Let it overflow from us. Give us determination, the determination to learn every stolen story, to teach our children the truth, to demand what is owed, to build wealth despite the obstacles, to succeed so loudly that we cannot be ignored. Make us immovable in our pursuit of truth and justice. Give us strength for the battles ahead, because the fight isn't over. The erasure continues. The denial continues. The discrimination continues. So we need strength for the long war. Strength to keep fighting when we're tired. Strength to keep building when they tear down what we create. Strength to keep speaking when they try to silence us. Make us warriors for truth. Make us soldiers for justice. Make us carriers of this sacred history. Make us teachers of the next generation. Make us unstoppable in our pursuit of what is right and true and owed. Vindicate our ancestors, Lord. Let their names be remembered. Let their sacrifices be honored. Let their stories be told. Cathay Williams, the Buffalo Soldiers. Every black person whose contribution was erased. Bring them out of obscurity. Give them their flowers, even though they're not here to receive them. Let their descendants know who they came from, and let us walk in their legacy. Let us honor them by thriving, by refusing to quit, by demanding justice, by building wealth, by teaching truth, by being everything they fought to make possible. In the name of Jesus, who came to set captives free and proclaim good news to the oppressed, we pray, Amen. Walk in truth today. Walk in power. Walk in the legacy of Cathay Williams. You are a soldier whether you wear a uniform or not. You are fighting for justice whether you carry a rifle or carry this truth forward. You are a warrior because you are still here despite everything designed to eliminate you. You are descended from people who could not be broken, and you cannot be broken either. Remember that. Teach your children that. Live that. Until next time, learn your history. Teach your children. Demand what is owed. Build wealth. Honor your ancestors. And never let them erase you again. You are free. They tried to cage your ancestors. They failed. They tried to erase your history. They failed. They tried to steal your inheritance. They failed because you're still here. Still standing, still fighting, still rising. That's who you are. A descendant of Cathay Williams. A descendant of warriors. A soldier for truth. Now go live like it.